Uh, so a guy was down the street and he was passing a construction site, and there was this woman walking ahead of him. And the construction workers were doing their thing, but one of them slipped, his hand slipped, and his hammer went flying and just hit this woman in the head, and she fell down. And he went running up to this woman on the ground, and he said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she said, "How would I know? I'm a doctor, not a lawyer." That's right. Yes, that's true. Right. I always start with a joke. All right. So, in this last couple of sessions, and this is not, if you don't know this, it's not going to slow you down at all in this one. But we have been looking at some of the stories of Lakota medicine man Black Elk. We, by which I mean we in this room, we are very fortunate that this particular medicine man was willing to, in 1930, he was willing to sit down with a writer and tell his entire life story to the poet John Neihart, the person who then assembled the book called Black Elk Speaks. And we're very fortunate because, first of all, it was not a good time for relations. But if these interviews hadn't been done, this is a lot of knowledge, a lot of information that would have been lost, that we wouldn't be able to understand. And Black Elk was willing to speak. He did not speak English, so he had a translator. His son was willing to translate, and Neihart's daughter took notes, and then John Neihart assembled this book. And the book Black Elk Speaks is one of the two most famous books about Native Americans, that and Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Almost to the point where that it can become a little bit problematic, because Black Elk was not speaking for all Native Americans. He was not even speaking for all natives of the plains. He was really just speaking for himself and from his own experience. But from these interviews and from him, we learn a good deal about indigenous ideas about medicine. Now, medicine is one of those words that when we look at the word in the context of indigenous Americans, we have to put the word in quotes, because I know that to us, medicine is, pills, and it comes in little bottles. But an indigenous medicine person, like Black Elk, they were a medicine person, meaning that they were familiar with, not with pills, but with herbal medicines, where you go out into the woods and you find some flower, some tree bark, some root, some plant, some herb. And then what you've got is you've got this kind of accumulated information and from thousands of years of experimentations. Like, even if you say such and such flower, there are things where if you eat it, it's poisonous, but if you make it into a tea, it's okay. Or if you make it into like a poultice, you rub it onto a wound, it can be okay. There are some plants that can be medicinal if you collect it at this time of year, but not at that time of year. There are things, as one medicine person said, with some plants, maybe you just dance in a circle around it and you feel better. And that comes from, again, thousands of years of experimentation. And many of the medicines that we today put into pill form were first discovered by indigenous medicine people. And, we can benefit when we walk into a pharmacy and it's full of pills. Some of these pills are synthesized versions of, some African root that medicine people have been using for thousands of years. Some of them are synthesized versions of some, Florida tree bark that medicine people discovered. And then, when something becomes a medicine, when something becomes part of our pharmacological system, our pharmacopoeia, we will generally give it some like Greek name. Yes, good. So yeah, that's a good example, where we can say I have a headache, I want to take some aspirin, but somebody else could say, well, but that was started out as willow bark extract, and then if you went back a couple of centuries, when somebody had a headache, somebody else would go into the woods, find a willow tree, scrape some bark off of it, and maybe boil that into a tea. You could not put it, you could not put it into pill form. So we have all of these medicines, and we don't really keep track of where they come from or what culture they come from, because I think a lot of people, if you went into the pharmacy and this thing said like, West African snake root, a lot of people wouldn't take it. They'd say, oh, I don't want, but then if you give it some Greek name, then they'll say like, giving a medicine a Greek name is kind of our way of saying it has been approved by white people. And, we have this cultural idea that the Greeks were the inventors of medicine. They absolutely were not. But medicine, now, that's right, that's right. Then to say, we don't need to keep scraping bark off of this tree. We can figure out the chemical combination, and then we can just synthesize that in a lab. And, and then by the time the pill gets to you, you get this pill and it says, aspirin is 0.05% of this pill. And then the rest of it is just cornstarch, this little, Okay, right, right. So we inherit this whole idea of what medicine is, but when we study indigenous medicine, we kind of have to put the word in quotes because a lot of it is not chemical. And for today's session, I'm going to be sharing some pieces from the book Walking in the Sacred Manner by Tilda Long Soldier and Mark St. Pierre, a Native American woman and an anthropologist. Now, the human body is, on the one hand, made up of chemicals. We can say everything in the human body is some kind of chemical. But we also have to say, and even if we are Unitarians or, but that there is something about the human being that is more than chemical. There are parts of the human being that are chemical, and there are parts of the human being that are, spiritual or however, whatever word you would want to use. And similarly, medicine is partly chemical, and it's partly spiritual. Part of what makes our medicines work is that, if my stomach is upset and I use an Alka-Seltzer, there are chemical things that are going on. But there is also, I believe that my stomach will feel better. Part of medicine is psychosomatic. It is a placebo effect. And the human body is part chemical and part something else. And in indigenous traditions, there is, we could say there is an attention to this, that part of sickness is chemical. Part of what makes us sick is chemical. And part of it is attitude or, sometimes we wake up in the morning and, we feel like a little bit scratchy in our throat or a little bit achy in our head. And there are days when we wake up feeling that way and we say, nope, I'm fine. And you get up and you take your shower and you do your stuff. And then, at some point in the day, you've forgotten that you felt that way in the morning. There are other days that we wake up in the morning, we got a little scratch in our throat, a little ache in our head, and we say, ugh, I am sick, and it's probably because I was up too late last night, or it's because of this, or it's because I'm a bad person, or whatever. And we kind of meet it halfway. It's almost like sometimes there are sicknesses that are just real and unavoidable. But there are plenty of bad days, plenty of common colds or whatever, that kind of offer us the handshake, and either we take it or not. And that has to do with, some other part of our constitution, some other part of our belief about ourselves. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes my body says like, well, are we going to be sick today? And sometimes I say, I'm a bad person. And then just, and then everything collapses. Or sometimes my body says, are we going to be sick today? And I say like, you know what? No, like I'm out there, I'm energized, I want to get out there and do some good in this world. And then I just get up and I'm okay. What is that? That is something that you cannot, put into a pill bottle, or, I've heard before that laughter is the best medicine. And, if you can go into a hospital and make people laugh, they actually do chemically somehow feel better or get better. And I think, well, but that's not chemical. That's not something you can put in a pill. All right. So, as Tilda Long Soldier wrote, medicine can be an herb taken orally. It can be the touch of a spirit or a feather. It can be a sacred song, or even a handshake. Human contact can be medicinal. When you are feeling really run down or you're feeling really sick, sometimes somebody can put their hand on your shoulder and you'll just, feel a little bit better. Or sometimes hearing a song, or, seeing something that makes you happy, or looking outside and hearing birds singing and seeing flowers blooming, things like this can be a form of medicine. And embrace can be medicinal. A song can be medicinal. We have certain songs where like you hear that song and it makes you feel better. And maybe that song works, 20 or 25 times, or maybe it works for 25 years. And then one day you're feeling down and you put that song on and you say, this doesn't change anything. Well, you've probably built up a tolerance to the medicine that's in that song, and it's time to find yourself a new medicine song to get yourself going. If I was sick and in a session, a couple of sessions from now, we're gonna hear one of Black Elk's stories about making a house call. And as a medicine person, he's going to go into somebody's house and he's going to dance in a circle and he's going to sing a song and he's going to shake a rattle and he's going to like blow tobacco smoke at this kid. And the kid is going to get better. Whereas, we might look at that and say, oh my goodness, secondhand smoke and a turtle shell rattle and like dancing, in a hospital room. Like, what does this do for anybody? Well, it's because the illness is part chemical and also something else. Being a healer, being an indigenous medicine person is not like being a doctor in the modern world. Nobody says like, I want my kid to grow up to be a doctor, or in a Native American tribe. Nobody says, I want my kid to grow up to be a medicine person. Being a medicine person is dangerous. For one hand, on the one hand, you're going to have to go into enclosed spaces with people who have, like germs and real sicknesses that you don't necessarily know about. And We think of, germs, sickness as something that's carried by like microscopic monsters. In other cultures, they would think of that as spirit, like, malevolent, harmful spirit energies. Actually, harmful spirit energies, microscopic monsters, very similar to each other. They are unseen forces that can just get a hold of somebody and change the way that their body is working. So nobody says that they want to be a medicine person. The way that it happens in a tribal culture is a person will begin having visions. They'll, everybody in a tribal culture, everybody has visions. That's part of life. That's what we might call like, dreams or, things like that. Some people's dreams, some people's visions, when they tell them to the medicine person will say, this is a vision that's telling you that the spirits want you to do this thing. They want you to put yourself in some danger for the good of the community. The other reason nobody wants to be a tribal medicine person when they grow up is that it is not a full-time job. You don't get paid, you don't get a salary. As a matter of fact, it is part-time work in addition to doing the same work that everybody else does. So being Native American, if you can imagine this, if we could go back in time 600 years to an Iroquois village here in Niagara Falls and watch people and take notes and keep track of who was doing what, we would find, interestingly enough, being Native American was a part-time job. It was probably about 13 hours a week of work for all of the basic food, shelter, clothing, tools, all of the necessities. Now, remember, in a Native American village, there are no taxes and there are no shareholders. So all of the work that you do directly benefits you and the people around you. You don't have to work 30% more so that the shareholders can make money, and you don't have to work 15% more to pay your taxes. Matter of fact, which is not to say, if you live in a Native American village, your version of paying taxes is that you go and work with everybody else. You donate your labor, to the good of the community. So let's say being Native American is a part-time job of like 13 hours a week. If you are the medicine person, you still do all of the things that everybody else does. Plus, you have this other part-time job, that takes up another 13 to 20 hours a week, which is somebody gets sick, they come to you, you do house calls. You go around to people's homes. A Native American village, now when you watch a movie with Native Americans, the person goes to the Native American village and there is the medicine person, the one medicine person. This is a total Hollywood fiction that makes zero sense, because then if your medicine person like falls off a cliff, all of your medicinal knowledge is gone. So really, if we were watching like Dances with Wolves, and it was real life, he would go to the village and there would be like 9 medicine people. There would be like 4 medicine guys and 5 medicine women. And they would actually be specialists. They would be, they would have their kind of specialized fields. And we'll look closer at that. But in our culture, being a doctor is a full-time job. Somebody, has to go to a lot of training. They become a doctor, they've got medical loans that they need to pay back. And the benefits of full-time doctors is that they can, really specialize in things. They are there, they're on call when you need them. You don't get sick and then find out that your doctor is gone for the next 6 hours because they have to do their share of the fishing or the farming or the hunting, or all of the other things that people have to do. So we like having full-time doctors. In indigenous cultures, part-time doctors. Being a medicine person is a part-time thing. That also, we could say, maybe has certain benefits. The medicine person is a more integrated part of your community. They work with you when it's time to expand the longhouse. They're there doing that with you. When it's time to go on the bison hunt, they're with you doing that. So they have all of those same experiences, the same shared frame of reference. They don't kind of drift out into just being so hyper specialized into one thing that, I mean, for goodness sake, if you can imagine like being, married to a podiatrist and asking every day, how was work? And that they have no topic of conversation other than, the feat that they have seen that day, which also would be illegal for them to tell you about other people's feet because that information is private and protected. So they can't actually tell you anything. Having a medicine person who also does the other things, it means that's a person that you really know them, you can talk with them. They're not remote, they're not separate from us the way that we think of like doctors as being, in their own circle. So for us in our culture, we like having full-time doctors. When we hear that other cultures, being a doctor is a part-time job, that might sound kind of strange or primitive or whatever. There are other cultures of equally intelligent people who would say, no, actually, it makes sense for your doctors to be part-time. And, and it's strange to think that somebody, in order to be a dermatologist would need to like separate themselves from everything else in life and spend 9 years studying just that. A lot of our medical knowledge is in textbooks. We have medical texts. It's going to make it difficult for us to understand non-literate cultures, cultures in which medical knowledge is not written down in textbooks. In other cultures, your medical knowledge is it is an oral tradition. It is something that you learn through apprenticeship and through other medicine people. And also, medical knowledge comes from dreams and visions where somebody will encounter a certain condition and somewhere in their mind, a picture of some plant will appear and they'll go off and they will look for that plant. Now, if I heard about that, I would say this must be some kind of association or maybe some kind of subconscious thing or, some kind of information, real information that's stored back there. For an indigenous person, it would be enough to say, I had a vision of this plant and therefore I believe that this plant is going to have some effect. Among the Lakota, I think this is true of indigenous cultures in general, for male shamans, medicine people, the calling usually comes at around the onset of puberty, as a person's body changes from a child body to an adult body, as their mind is changing from a child mind to an adult mind. Their dreams and visions start to kind of guide them in this direction. Black Elk grew up in a culture where everybody, as you are becoming an adult, a medicine person will come up to you, not on your 15th birthday, not at the same time for everyone, but when the village becomes aware of you becoming an adult, the medicine person will come up to you. They will say, it is time for you to go on your vision quest, for you to have your vision. And the vision is not the same for everyone. The vision is there to kind of guide you. It's there to say, this is where you, as an individual, this is how you are going to fit into your community. And this is how you, as a human being, are going to fit into the wider community of life and existence. So there are certain young men like Black Elk who, as teenagers, the medicine people will, will like take this teenager. They'll say, it's time for you. you're going to sit on this mountainside for 3 days, you're going to have a vision, you tell it, and then they approach that as like a kind of dream interpreter or a psychoanalyst. They hear the elements of the vision and they say, your vision is telling you to do this, your vision is telling you you need to concentrate on being, a great hunter and provider. You need to, maybe you are going to be in some kind of leadership position. Some people tell their vision to the medicine person, and the medicine person says, your vision is telling you to become a medicine person. It's not something you celebrate. It's not something you're really happy about, but you just say, this is what I'm called to do. For boys, it generally happens at around the onset of puberty. There is a gender difference here. A female medicine person will generally receive that calling at around the time of menopause. And that, for one thing, being a medicine person is dangerous, and it does mean making house calls and going into enclosed spaces with sick people. You don't generally send your reproductive teenage girls into that situation. But there are women in tribal cultures who, once they get to the age where they're not raising their own small children anymore, or like when the kids are grown up, what'll happen is, if you have raised, 6 kids to adulthood, people will just start showing up. They'll just start coming to your door and saying, one of my kids is sick. You've been around this long, you've raised 6 kids, I assume you've seen something like this before. What was it that worked? So being a medicine person, it does tend to be a little bit different between medicine men and medicine women. But for indigenous women, being a doctor is like a second career. Like you kind of finish your first career, that first stage in life, and then you say, well, I'm still around, my kids don't need me anymore. Now people keep coming to my door and asking for medical advice. I guess I am a medicine person now. That is men and women. And then interestingly enough, in some, not all, but in some Native American tribes and some indigenous tribes in general, when a person is going through puberty and they go through their vision and they talk with the medicine person, if the medicine person identifies that person is what we would call a transgender person or a non-binary person, in some tribes, then the medicine person will say, and now you're going through this change, you're going to be on a journey that's a little bit different from the boys and a little bit different from the girls. But part of it is you are also going to be called to become a medicine person. In some Native North American tribes, the two-spirit person, and that's the Ojibwa expression. Different tribes have different expressions for like non-binary gendered people, but the one that's been adopted pretty universally is the Ojibwa expression, the two-spirit person, the person who has spirit of male and spirit of female. In some tribes, that person has to become the medicine person because it is believed that they are going to be the one who can kind of understand both male and female ailments, including physical ailments, but also including psychological or spiritual ailments. So interestingly enough, in our culture, being trans, this is something that we are really, struggling and negotiating about whether a trans person can be a full human being, or is something less. But there are other cultures in which if they find out that you are a trans person, they expect you, their expectation is that you are going to be something more than a human being, somebody who can actually have like a special understanding, a special empathy, and a special spiritual knowledge. Do we have any questions so far? Good, good. Well, we got a few minutes left, and you know, I'm not tired of the sound of my own voice yet, so we might go a little bit further. Now, when Black Elk talks about what does it mean to be a medicine person, what kind of power do you have as a medicine person? He says, of course, it was not I who could cure someone. It was the power from the outside world, and the visions and ceremonies had only made me like a hole through which the power could come to the two-leggeds. If I thought I was doing it myself, the hole would close up and no power could come through. Then everything I could do would look foolish. When Black Elk was asked, what kind of healing power do you have, do you contain in your body? Do you have healing magic in your body? He said, no. He said, I am like a conduit. I am like a wire or like a portal through which power from the spirits, power from the spirit world can come through my body in order to kind of use my hands and use my voice in order to help somebody in the flesh world, the two-leggeds, the people. He said, if I ever went around telling people that I had healing magic in my body, then the spirits would stop. They would not back me up in that. They would stop using me as a portal. And then then the things I do would just look foolish. This is a fascinating element of Native American medicine. Here again, this is going to be a little bit different from our idea of medicine. The medicine person's power, by which I mean the power to serve as a conduit, a portal between the spirit world and the physical world. That power is believed to be finite. The belief among the Lakota was that when a person, when like a person, like a boy is like going through puberty and he has those visions that tell him that he's going to be a medicine person, the belief is that the thunder beings are going to put a certain amount of that energy into his body and that they will never add more. And that every time he heals someone, some of that energy will be spent. And the belief is that if you are a medicine person, you know, you can start at the age of like 15. Black Elk did it till he was 90. So it didn't wear him out all at once. I mean, he had a good 75 years of being a medicine person. But the belief is that it is finite, and that once you have used your finite amount, then your body will die. Then that is the end of you. Now, we wouldn't necessarily say that we share this belief. We would not necessarily identify this as like, I mean, think about this. A medical doctor, is there some number of like shots that they can give in their lifetime, and that each injection that they give brings them one step closer to death? Does a psychiatrist have a limited number of minutes of listening to people, and when those minutes are gone, they die? We don't necessarily think of doctors in that way. However, bless you. However, if we actually take a moment and think about this, if we actually look at this, Yes, yes, a medical doctor does. They have a finite number of patient visits, a finite number of things that they can do. And, they can keep going once they run out, but then they will become speed addicts and then they will have heart attacks and die. I mean, that's generally where a doctor's story is going. So among Native Americans, they just understand this. This is one of those areas where I think they kind of tell it like it is, and we're kind of in denial. They say, a medicine person, there's only so much you can do it. At a certain point, you either get off the boat or you're finished. So this is one of those things that when I said, nobody says I want to be a medicine person when I grow up, or nobody says I want my kid to be a medicine person. They know that it is something that is going to come with a great cost. It will eventually destroy you. But like I said, Black Elk did it for 75 years. I mean, he died at around 90. So, it's not like our modern doctors who like drop dead at 60. All right. Good. Well, I think this is a good spot for us to pick up next time. Do we have any? I'm sorry, you did put your hand up a minute ago. Okay. This is whom? Okay. I take your word for it, having no idea of whom you speak. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well, good. Yeah, so we'll continue next time, and we will be continuing to look at indigenous beliefs about medicine. So thank you. Yes, she was Dr.